Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and
Cheryl.
we are talking. This is our part dos segment on the Snyder Cut for Justice League. So, if you haven't seen our part one, go ahead and watch that. If you haven't seen the movie, go ahead and watch that. This is going to be us going into spoilers. We were kind of like safe in our first version, on our part one, but we're going to make sure that we're probably going to get really in depth and really into a lot of detail going into this next segment. So, without further ado, we're going to just jump right into it. One of the things that I absolutely hated. And to be clear, I like this movie a lot. I really enjoyed this movie. One of the things I hated was the Icelandic chicks singing at the beginning
Oh
of the
my
movie
gosh,
after
yes.
Aquaman leaves. I'm literally like, what is the point of this other than to give us some type of cutting point to go to Martha Kent in the next scene? But quite literally, you can just have them start singing, you show Bruce Wayne leave, and then that's your cutting point. We don't need to linger on this group singing for an extra minute and a half because it like that literally felt long to me, and that one was only a minute and a half. Like that could have gone.
Like as I mentioned earlier, it's not concise and it could have been more concise, and that was definitely one of the segments that I thought Joss Whedon did better because everything was concise, it was back to back, it wasn't spread out with other scenes in between with Batman and Aquaman and going, underwater. I mean, I guess that had to be spread out a little bit. But I just felt like it could have been a lot more concise there. And definitely did not like the singing. Not that the singing was bad, I just didn't really see the point in it besides
Yeah,
them being like, "Oh, hail Aquaman," but
yeah. That's the point, to try to show that they see him as like a god and they're really like appreciative and enamored with him. But you don't need it doesn't need to be as long as it was for us to get the point. We got the point the moment they started singing and Bruce Wayne started to leave. Like the moment Bruce Wayne leaves the scene, we can leave the scene. But the things that I did like about this movie, we talked about this a lot with our discussions, but this whole idea of, and we talked about this in school, plants and payoffs. And this movie has a lot of payoffs that I can appreciate, that it sets up throughout the entirety of the film. They show when Barry is running in the Superman ship and they show the box hit the water but then start to reverse. That's a plant for what's going to happen later in the movie when he has to reverse time to save everybody. The whole thing with Bruce Wayne is working on a ship the entire time throughout the course of the movie that he can't get to fly. The whole point is that so at the end when Cyborg comes, he's the one that fixes it and gets the ship to fly. They are in Star Labs and they're working on superheating, or they're working on a laser that's hitting a part of like the Kryptonian ship, and they say that, oh, when you do this, it reacts and it gets super hot. That's the plant so that it can pay off when Silas Stone ends up using that same laser to superheat the mother box so that the Justice League can find the box once it's taken again by Steppenwolf. So all these things are story beats and story elements that are put into the film to be paid off later. And so when they are paid off, those moments for me felt good.
I definitely feel like I didn't quite pick up on those because of how spread out all the information was. I definitely had a big problem with the way things were cut. For example, we don't actually meet Barry Allen until 1 hour into the movie, and that's when we get his little backstory thing. I feel
Right.
like I don't understand why it took us so long to get to that scene. And so I guess you could also say with the whole parts, because he kind of did like a Tarantino thing where he uses title cards to separate. I'm not sure what he's separating because they don't feel like chapters. And I just feel like I would have wanted to meet everyone sooner than 1 hour.
That's
And
fair.
the other thing about the Flash is I kind of like his character development more in the Joss Whedon version because when we get to know him, I just feel like it's not really clear at what point he is with his skill level development because he's a young person and he's not a crime scene investigator yet. And so I feel like I don't know how much he knows. But in the Whedon version, he's nervous and he even tells Batman like I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to do. And so Batman has this like mentorship where he's like, "Well, you'll know when you will just know what to do." And we didn't really get that in the Snyder cut. And we didn't really get to know the rules of changing time. So we hear about that at the very end. And if you're a Flash fan, you know about Flashpoint and how he's not supposed to change time and everything, but he does that in the Snyder version. And we don't have anyone mention the rules that he is breaking. And that also tells us that he is pretty far along in his development of skills. So I kind of miss that relationship that he had with Batman.
Right. So, and I'm the opposite. I like Flash more in this movie. I found Flash annoying in Joss Whedon's version of Justice League, and I would say that it's hard to have that scene with Batman and still have that scene where Flash saves Iris, because the scene where Flash saves Iris shows that he's competent in his skills and that he's at least used to using them in like dire situations. And even when you see them rescuing everybody, and then a piece on the island, and then a piece of the debris gets blown off, and then it starts falling on everybody, and he's able to like catch all the pieces to save people, it shows that he knows what he's doing. So the difference is that they're two different Flashes. Whedon's Flash is meant to be someone that messes up and that's more new to crime fighting, which is why they even added that line of him saying, "I just push people and run away." But that's not what Zack Snyder, at least from my interpretation of what I'm seeing, that's not what he means for Flash to be. He wants Flash to be competent at what he's doing, which is why Flash even says, "When I go really fast, weird things happen with time," and that's not in the Whedon version. And but that all that stuff exists to show that Flash is comfortable with being a superhero. And even when he survives at the end, when that explosion comes and kills everybody, he phases out of existence, and that's why things miss him. But I can admit that if you don't know Flash, you don't know that that's what happened. You don't know that that's what he did because you haven't seen him do that in the movie until that point, and he never brings it up. So that can be very jarring.
I mean,
But
not
I do.
sorry. I just want
Mhm.
to make clear. I think how Snyder did Flash worked for how Snyder did Flash. I just
Yeah,
missed the way the
the
relationship that
interaction
he had with Batman in the
with
other
Batman.
version, and and that like he was still learning. It was just it was very Whedon. It added to the Whedon version of it. So
Yeah, for
two
sure.
separate things.
Um, but one of the things I did like about Flash is that he felt less neurotic, and therefore his humor felt less forced. Like Flash is still funny in this movie, but the humor that came from Flash never annoyed me or felt grating on me. It felt appropriate. And also I like the fact that Flash has an emphasis on his intelligence where when Cyborg is explaining the whole idea of um what the mother boxes can do, it's actually Flash is the first person to say, "You mean from like a standpoint of matter cannot be either created nor destroyed." Like he's actually a part of the conversation. It shows that he is intelligent. So I like that aspect of Flash in this movie.
Yeah, I do remember saying in the Whedon version that I didn't like how Flash was presented as so like it was just too much, but I definitely felt better about Flash in the Snyder version. I just felt like I wasn't clear on where his skill level was. It just didn't feel um I just didn't feel clear on it. But after you explained to me on those little details, I think I was just missing these details because this movie was
It's
so long. I can't
Yeah.
remember that much stuff.
It's also worth saying that Flash is less Barry Allen and more Wally West in this interpretation of him, and that can be annoying for you as a comic book fan if you want to see a certain representation of your character. Um, the other parts of the movie that I I really enjoyed were I enjoyed how Victor Stone has his story in this movie. I enjoy how you get to see what happens with him and his father in that relationship, how that's hard. And it caught me by surprise. I don't know why, like thinking back on it, like I didn't think that this was going to happen. But when he's listening and his father is telling him like what he can do, and you're seeing the montage of it, like that's cool. It's him learning how to use his powers, and that's necessary. But the moment when his father says, "Let me talk to you about his father," and he crushes the recorder, I didn't think to myself that that was going to come back later. But I was very surprised and happy when it does come back later in the movie where he fixes it and then he's hearing the voice of his father after his father has died. And it felt like an appropriate punctuation mark to the film that I thought was a really nice touch.
I definitely agree. I liked having more time spent with Victor Stone and his father, and I felt like having them play a bigger and more important role in this movie felt more wholesome, I guess, as opposed to the other movie, because I felt like there wasn't enough. And I remember I I really like Victor Stone, the actor, and his
Yeah,
the
Ray
way he
Fisher.
the yeah, and the way he portrays Cyborg in this movie. I really like him. And I think he did like a really great job, and like I just wanted more. And I kept getting more as the movie kept going, and I was having fun with that. Um the other thing that I liked having more of was Amy Adams. And
Yes.
I felt like we didn't get enough of her in the other movie, where it felt a little bit like, why are we seeing her again? And then it takes a while for us to be like, oh, it's because she's the the backup plan, or the thing that's gonna get Superman back to normal, which he still was. But I don't know how I feel about the way that it it was worked out in this version of the film, because in the other one it was Batman saying like, bring in the big guns. But in this
Right.
version, when they confront Superman, Batman's kind of MIA, and I don't know why. And then when he finally does show up, he doesn't really like fight Superman. He just kind of stands there like, sorry, like a
Batman can't fight Superman without
say
prep
won't say
time.
words, which I understand. But he can, and he can hold up a little bit. But I'm I'm not gonna have this argument with you. I
You should
love
watch Man of
Superman.
Steel. Like, I mean, you should watch
Superman.
BVS again.
Superman to me, I definitely believe that Superman is more awesome than Batman. I've always felt that way in the Superman versus Batman thing. I always go Superman. But that's not what the argument is today. I'm just saying that I don't know how I feel about her just showing up. Um, because
Yeah.
the way that editing was, with her scene like walking down the street, and then we're like back to the Justice League, and then we see another shot of her, and then back to the Justice League, and then she sees him in the sky, and then we're like, oh, okay, that's why she's just gonna stumble upon it. I kind of think I like the other way better, where Batman calls her in.
Right. So this might be another detail that you might have missed, but she doesn't just stumble upon it. The point of her in the movie where she remember when she gets to go get coffee in the beginning of the movie, and
Mm-hmm.
she's going to that memorial and she's giving coffee to the cop, and the cop's like, "Oh, you're here again today." She goes to this place every day, so
Right.
it's literally
I
like a place.
definitely I got that development with her, finally getting to a point where she can let go and move on.
Yeah.
Um, so I got that. It just surprised me to have a shot of her in the middle of the Justice League getting the cube, getting Superman ready to come back.
And yeah, and that was because she goes like where they end up fighting. She was just there like 10 minutes earlier, which is why she goes there and she says, "Just this one last time." Because he's like, "Oh, I didn't think you were coming today." And she said, "Just this one last time," because now she's ready to move on, which is supposed to be like the irony of it. She's ready to move on. She goes there, and when she's there, the Justice League are in the Kryptonian ship about to bring him back, bring Clark back to life. So she leaves, and when Clark comes back and they hear the huge explosion, she's like maybe a couple of blocks down the street.
Mm-hmm.
So she's not actually that far. But so I feel like story wise, it makes sense. But I can definitely understand how at that point it comes to an aesthetic type thing. Do you prefer her being a part of Batman's plan, which does make Batman seem like a little bit more prepared for a worst case scenario, or do you like prefer this kind of idea that she was ready to move on, and right when she's ready to move on, she sees the object that she was ready to move on from?
Exactly. Yeah, I honestly, I'm not really 100% sure which way I like it better. I feel like they both have their pros and cons for that. I mean, I don't know. I do have to say though, with that scene with Lois and Martha, who turns out to be John Jones, for one
The Martian
scene, I don't know why John Jones had to be Martha, because that's exactly how Martha would have been anyway. And it's literally the only time we see John Jones, which, you know, it's cool
it's
to see him, but I don't think that was necessary at all.
it's pure fan service, and I put that in my notes too because I was like, wait a second, why does he have a stake in Lois? And I was like, maybe so that actor that plays John Jones is in Man of Steel. So just to be clear, this isn't the first time we're seeing him. But my question was, I don't remember him having such a close relationship with Lois to the point that he'd be worried about her. But even if he did, there's no reason why he wouldn't be able to show up as himself if he did have a close enough relationship with Lois to talk to her, unless he felt like the only person Lois was going to listen to was Martha. So that one is a little bit more rough for me, but I did enjoy seeing the cameo because there are seven members of the Justice League, and so it's like, oh, there's the seventh member since they don't have Green Lantern. Um, One other thing I wanted to bring up real quick that I did like in this movie, but this is part of the movie as a kind of a part of a greater whole, is I like Batman's progression. I like that this movie is kind of the cap on Batman's arc to return to a place of faith because in BVS he is beaten down, depressed, and cynical. And he, through the course of meeting Superman and fighting Superman, because Batman is intended to be the villain in Batman versus Superman, and it's intended to be Superman saving Batman and bringing him back to the light. So that arc kind of begins in Batman versus Superman, but it culminates all into by the end of this movie where he gets on the jet and he looks at Alfred and says, "Faith, Alfred, it's all about faith." That is Batman going full circle and now becoming the Batman that he needs to be once again. So I liked that that arc exists.
Right. Yeah, it definitely plays into the whole concept of this movie being part of a bigger thing as opposed to the other movie, which is more of a standalone. Because I definitely feel like there was a lot of it was kind of like Batman trying to find a team because he is worried something might happen, which will, as opposed to the Whedon version where Batman's trying to get a team together because something is happening and he needs help.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's definitely a lot less time spent in the Snyder version mourning Superman and fighting about Superman. And it was more
Yes.
about the actual characters who are there, and he just shows up in like the last hour, I think.
Barely. It's like the last 40 minutes of the movie or something like that. As far as like showing up to actually fight. Maybe it was in the last hour. He comes alive with like an hour and a half left in the movie or something. But he spends most of the movie dead.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but bringing up Superman, one scene that I did like, but it's another. It's like this movie is a lot of mixed bags, and I overall like it. But we can talk about the things that are issues as well. Um, when Superman enters his ship again, and they're playing the Superman theme, and he's walking and he's seeing all of his suits, but he's hearing his fathers speak to him, and it's all to mirror the Man of Steel scene when he first learned how to fly. Like I think that scene is generally great. It's really strong and emotional, and I love the fact that he's like hearing both of his dads basically telling him about like how he can be a hero and making it so that you can get ready to fly again. The thing I don't understand is why he chooses the black suit over the one that's more colorful. Because the black suit is, it feels like more of a statement of I'm not that person anymore, and I'm gonna be and I'm gonna be different. I'm gonna be something else. But with the music and everything that they're playing, it makes it feel like I am that symbol and I'm gonna be that symbol again. So realistically, it makes sense that he would pick the colorful outfit to represent the thing that he always stood for. And the only reason that black suit is there is because it's fan service. And in the story, he was put in that suit to recover. It was a recovery suit. So that's why it existed. So in the context of this movie, though, I don't understand why he chooses that suit. But I generally like that scene.
It's because he didn't get to go to his own funeral. No, I don't know. I definitely think that there was some importance for it. I just don't know what it is. I think we'd have to do a little bit of research on that one, or maybe someone in
Yeah,
our audience knows why he chose the black suit. But I think that is there's definitely some kind of purpose behind it.
yeah, and like I see in the chat now, they're saying that it's supposed to be a red herring that he might be different or and of things to come. Or not a red herring, but maybe just a general like bad omen. Especially when you like have Batman saying that I had this dream, and Lois was the key, and he says I think it means something else, something darker, which is intended to imply that when Lois dies, that she's the key to why Superman turns evil. But that could also be the anti-life equation, which we can talk about briefly later. Um, but the last two things I wanted to bring up that I liked and that I enjoyed in the movie. So I like the Flash scene at the end for two reasons. I like the fact that they lose. Same way like Infinity War. I like the fact that the heroes end up actually losing, and Barry has to basically fix the loss. I wish they kind of made it more apparent that everyone had died because at first I wasn't sure what had happened. Um, but I liked the fact that they aren't successful and it's up to Barry to essentially save the day and then pass it off to Vic to finish off the boxes. And that teamwork and that and people getting different moments to shine is really cool. And I love the music that played in that Barry Allen scene, which leads me to the fact that while I don't think the score of this movie is absolutely phenomenal, I enjoy it a lot. And in comparison to the Whedon cut, I enjoy the score a lot more here because there's actual themes for characters.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that, especially with. I kind of felt like Wonder Woman got a new theme, but also got to keep the old one, which I thought stood out to me the most out of all the music in this movie. Hers definitely just, I couldn't not notice it.
Yeah.
I don't think that the score was particularly strong, but I do think that you're right in that it's better than the Whedon version.
Yeah.
I also wanted to say that I like the ending a lot more for same reasons as you, but also because I feel like it's not just like Superman comes and beats him up and that's it. They actually all work together as a team, which is awesome. And there's this one shot where Batman is like in the Batmobile and they're all like running beside him and there's that one, if ever a time for a slow mo shot, that was the right one. Also
Slow it
the
down so we can see this poster.
right. Also the sesame seed from the burger that the truck driver was trying to reach in Barry Allen's character
Oh,
scenes. There was
right.
this slow mo close up of a sesame seed. But anyway, uh, I don't know why that was there, but okay. Um, but yeah, I do feel like the ending was a lot stronger than the rest of the movie. I think that's when it really started to pick up for me. Was that last hour and a half or so? or last
Yeah.
hour of the movie before the epilogue is when things really started to pick up for me. Everything else before that was just kind of like, oh, let me tell you about this, let me tell you about that, and now let me tell you a story. And they even tell you, like, um, Cyborg actually says it's a long story. And I was like, oh, here we go. And then he actually tells it, and that story was interesting, but there
Yeah.
was also a lot of like history lessons that we got from like Wonder Woman and stuff like that. They were just very long. Very long.
Yeah, they exist just so that they could. It's world building. They're trying to build the world, but I can understand. I can definitely like feel that. I I like the conclusion for Steppenwolf's story in this one more so than the Whedon cut. Because in the Whedon cut it feels very arbitrary. He's basically like he gets his axe cut by Wonder Woman, and then once his axe breaks, he has fear, and then all the parademons look at him, and then Aquaman's like, "Oh, you smell that fear?" And then all the parademons swarm Steppenwolf, and then he gets taken up into a boom tube. It doesn't make much sense. It's actually a very weak ending. But this ending feels like a statement because you have Darkseid like looking through the boom tube, and once again, it's a mixed bag. It's like he's there, but why doesn't Darkseid just step through the boom tube himself? But you have Darkseid watching from the boom tube, and you have Steppenwolf like basically gets impaled by Aquaman and then thrown back and then hit by Superman to get thrown back into the boom tube, like sending him home. But before you can fully send him home, you have Wonder Woman cut his head off, and then it goes through the boom tube. It lands at Darkseid's feet. That feels like a cool statement of don't mess with Earth. And and then they sit there and they look at Darkseid before the boom tube closes, and at that point, Darkseid's like, all right, we need to go so I can get the anti-life equation. And that's the whole reason why the anti-life equation is brought up in this movie, because it's something that Darkseid literally says he's been crushing worlds to look for, and now he knows that it's here. So he has a reason to come back more so than just the fact that this one world stopped one of his generals that he barely liked. Um, so I enjoyed that ending to Steppenwolf more than the original cut.
Well, so one of the I think it was the first scene or one of the first scenes is when Steppenwolf is talking to forget his name, but
It's odd.
yeah, that guy. He actually tells him that there's no one on Earth to protect anyone. Like there's no one there. There's no Green Lantern. There's no Kryptonians to protect Earth. And then they're all like, I mean, there's no Green Lantern, but there is a team there. And I think the irony in that is that there actually is a team there to protect Earth.
Yeah.
What I didn't particularly like is that our heroes killed someone. Because
Yeah,
usually heroes
you haven't
don't do
seen
that.
DC stuff, huh?
But then again, it's also DC. I don't know. I had sort of mixed
This ain't
feelings
Marvel,
about
girl.
it.
Like the only person that doesn't, there's only two people in DC that, uh, not necessarily, but there are two main people in DC that don't kill people, and um,
Superman.
that is Superman and Batman. Yeah, Wonder Woman's a warrior. Even in the comic books, she kills people. She has no problem killing people. She actually snaps a dude. She snaps a dude's neck. You know that guy in Wonder Woman 84, the villain in Wonder Woman 84 that is like giving wishes. That same character in the Wonder Woman comic book is killed by Wonder Woman when she snaps his neck. Wonder Woman's a warrior. She always has been. And
Okay.
so, like, yeah, so she kills. Aquaman has no problem with killing. Mira has no problem with killing. By the way, cool, awesome shot in the movie where Mira literally was pulling the water out of Steppenwolf's body while while he was invading Atlantis um for the mother box. That was pretty cool. He was like, "Oh no, I can't handle this," and threw her away. Um, but yeah, so and seeing our heroes kill or seeing Wonder Woman specifically killed doesn't bother me because it's kind of what happens. And if you watch the animated DC movies, that kind of stuff happens all the time. Like, go and watch Justice League Apocalypse War. It's all over that movie. But when you're used to a certain way that your heroes behave, I can see why it would throw you for a loop. What I would say is just focus on who's actually doing it and see if that makes sense. Because it doesn't make as much sense for Superman to do it as it would for Wonder Woman.
Gotcha. I mean, they don't really portray Wonder Woman in her movies that way, so it was a little surprising to me.
Yeah. Except in the first movie though, she was in war.
I had to watch it back.
Like
I had to watch everything again.
she literally knees a guy through a building. That guy was not getting back up. Oh man. But yeah, I guess the last thing I wanted to ask you was as far as the inclusion of Darkseid, the anti-life equation, those elements which would be more sequel baiting elements. Um, I enjoyed them because to me they added to the story. But how did you feel about seeing those inclusions?
There was a lot of stuff, and I think that it kind of overwhelmed me a little bit because I wasn't expecting there to be such a long explanation and so much intricate detail to go with the mother box and the villain. Because remember, I was going
Yeah.
from just Steppenwolf, and now there's like this whole gang, and there's Darkseid, and there's all this other stuff, and I just wasn't expecting all of that. I think it's cool that it's all there, that there's like a lot of stuff that can be explored for DC in the DC universe for more movies to be made. Um, it was just a lot. There was a lot of stuff in this movie. This 4 hours of stuff. It was just all in general a lot. So I felt very overwhelmed. But
Yeah.
also, if you like, I think I've said this before, if you just pay attention to all the little things, all the details, it's nice to have all of it. It's just a lot of stuff.
Right. And so the future stuff that's at the end of the movie with Joker and Batman and that whole like timeline stuff, the stuff that exists just because it's like, hey, this is what we could have done. It's not going to go anywhere. Um, Realistically, I don't think they need it to be a part of the movie, but it is just because they're not going to be able to do anything else with it. Um, how did you feel about that stuff?
Um, I don't know. No opinion. I just feel like it was even more stuff. It was just a lot. It makes
Yeah,
me
it's like Lord of the
curious.
Rings. You get three endings.
But it's not even that. I feel like there was an ending to this movie. It's just that there was like, there's an epilogue and there's a prelogue and it feels a lot like we got Infinity Wars and Endgame all in one movie without the supporting movies.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Yeah. Um, I feel like it might have helped a little bit to watch Man of Steel and BVS again before going into this movie. But at the same time, I do understand that there's definitely a lot in this movie, and I feel like there's more in this movie, particularly in the last 30 minutes, or I guess last 20 minutes if you're not including credits, um, that only exists because of the fact that there won't be any more to this universe. Because I suspect that Snyder would have done something where he had the future timeline and and the present timeline playing out at the same time for us to see both, so that when we eventually get to the moment when the futures diverge and they change the future and stop Superman from becoming evil. But sadly, that will never happen. Or Superman being controlled by the anti-life equation, like that part is like made unclear. It's not clear if he like joins Darkseid because Lois dies, or he joins Darkseid because he becomes more susceptible to the anti-life equation. Either way, it's not going to happen and doesn't matter. And most casual moviegoers don't even know what the anti-life equation is or what it
I
does.
don't know
So
what it is. I do know that there are multiple Earths, like alternate dimensions. I don't,
yeah,
but I think because I love Superman so much, I don't want to see him be evil, and it makes me sad.
yeah, no, and if, yeah, I know for certain Superman fans probably feel like they haven't gotten to see really Superman really be Superman, unfortunately, in these movies, and I, that's a fair argument. But we're running up on time here. We're over half an hour. And since we had another part before this, we've been talking about this movie for almost an hour. Is there anything else that you wanted to, any burning desires that you wanted to say before we cut the recording and go back to our Twitch?
No, I think I got it all off my chest.
All right, it's cool, and I feel the same. So, what do you guys think about Justice League: The Snyder Cut? Did you like it? Whatever you thought below, excuse me, whatever you thought, comment below and let us know. And while you're down there, if you give us a like, share, subscribe, we'd love to hear from you guys and to hear what your own thoughts on the movies were, and even like the future of like the Snyderverse as it's being called. Will they keep making more movies based in this universe, or are they just going to scrap it? And this is just a preview of what could have been. Either way, whatever you do, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we will see you all next time.